Hello and welcome to this vSuite version 0.4 video tutorial. And in this video tutorial I'm just going to show you some of the vSuite capabilities in terms of outputting certain elements of the Radiance scene description and the Radiance results that we create when we're using the LiVi component of the vSuite. So I've just got a model here from my photon mapping, my previous photon mapping tutorial. And I have a standard node setup. I've got a standard LiVi node setup with my VI location, LiVi geometry, LiVi context, and LiVi simulation nodes. So when, for example, we hit the export button on the LiVi geometry node, the Blender geometry is converted into geometry or a geometry description that Radiance can understand. And that description is stored within that node as text. So if we want to see it, we can add an edit node, a text edit node. We can drag that to between these two nodes and it will link in between them. Now what that does is this text edit node now takes the Radiance geometry description from this node and it places it within Blender's text editor with the name LiVi geometry. So if I was to go to Blender's text editor, I can see now that I have this LiVi geometry entry within the text editor. And this entry for the LiVi geometry will tell us what the materials are and what the geometry are, and if we have any artificial lights within the scene, what the lights are for each frame of our parametric geometric analysis. And I don't have animation turned on at the moment, so I just get frame 0. So I get my materials and my geometry. There's two types of geometry in here. There's simple polygon geometry and there is mesh, Radiance mesh geometry. These have been created because these glass surfaces have got the photon port turned on from my previous photon mapping tutorial. And if a surface of a model has the mirror material associated with it, or photon map is turned on, photon port is turned on, sorry, and a couple of other situations I can't quite remember, then the vSuite will fall back to Radiance's very simple polygon export routine. But for the other faces within the mesh that have standard plastic material associated with them, etc., then that geometry gets converted into a Radiance mesh, which then makes subsequent simulation a little bit quicker. And the importance of that distinction I'll come to in a moment. So we can also, if I just shift D that node, we can also drag that to between our LiVi context node and LiVi simulation node. And this text edit node now tells us that the text name is LiVi context. So if I go back to my text editor, I can see I've also got a LiVi context file here. And again, for each frame of the sky, parametric sky description, I will get my Radiance sky text description. So that's kind of the main sort of thing, the main functionality of the text edit node. Once the text is in here, we can save it as whatever we like, and then it can be used as part of a separate Radiance workflow. If you're using the command line to pipe together different Radiance commands, then you can integrate these text files into that workflow. And that's the same for LiVi geometry and LiVi context. And these, I'll just say while I think about it, this file, this pm.blend file, is saved to my desktop. And every time we do anything in the vSuite, we create a folder with the same name as the Blender file in the same place as the Blender file. And in this folder, you will have your global photon maps and your octrees that you've created as part of your LiVi Radiance simulation. You will also find in here any BSDFs that you've created, any light descriptions, radiance light descriptions that you've created. In OBJ, you'll see your mesh, this cube 0 mesh that exists in here. So all the files that you from the Radiance export and simulation process that you might require are either in here, or they can be saved from the text editor in Blender here. So that's kind of could be useful. We can also change values in here, and it will get picked up by the LiVi simulation node. So I've got two materials here. I've got my walls material, I've got my glass material. Now if I change the walls material here, so for example, well, let me just preview the scene. Okay, we don't have photon mapping turned on, so it's a bit noisy, but you can see the grey walls and the white light coming in through the white windows or clear windows. If I was to change the color of my walls, for example, to turquoise. Once I've made a change within Blender's text editor, if I put my mouse over the, or click on the text edit node and press update, that new value is now stored within this text edit node. Now I can preview that, but it hasn't made any difference. And it hasn't made any difference because this plastic walls material is only associated, is only being used within this Radiance mesh file that's been created. And this mesh file gets created with all the included materials when we press export in the LiVi geometry node. So it's too late to influence this mesh by the time we get here and start changing things within the VI text edit node. So this won't work. This won't make any difference. And you can, well, I won't go into that now. You can kind of make the V Suite fall back to this simpler export routine, but that's probably not very important. But the glass material is associated with these polygons, and if I change my glass material, and again, I click on my text edit node, update, and now I preview, we can see that that window glass has now picked up the new turquoise coloration from that text edit file. So you can do some quick edits within this text if you wish, but bear in mind I've got this set to 0.1 now. If I reconnect my node, it'll go back to reading what's stored within the LiVi geometry node, which was 0.8. So that's the basics of the text edit node and the text export capability that it affords you. If I press calculate, there is now this results out socket on my LiVi simulation node, and I can add now an output node, vSuite CSV or vSuite comma separated value. If I now drag in that node, I've got this export CSV button. So if I click on that, I can now navigate to, just going to navigate to the desktop, and it's given it the default name PM CSV. So if I export that, I can, just for convenience, look at that file within Blender's text editor. Where's the desktop? Turn off filter, PM CSV, and we can see now that for each sensor point and the XYZ coordinate of each sensor point, I plot out the area of the face or the vertex that that sensor point is associated with. I also plot out the illuminance, the daylight factor, full irradiance, and visible irradiance. And that's a comma separated value, so that can be imported into a graphing package or other third-party applications to allow you to visualize that data. If I was to turn on animation, and I might now need to update that node so that I've got my 0 to 2 frames here in my LiVi simulation node. If I was to now calculate that, then because now I have animated results within this node, the VI CSV export node has this new option, animated. And if I click that and export, and I call that PN anim, and if I look at that in my Blender text edit file, PN anim, oh, there wasn't actually anything there. And I think that's because I don't think I have turned on the capability of this VI CSV export node to export the animated LiVi results within the LiVi simulation node. This works for, I've made this work for EnVi and the EnergyPlus component of the V Suite, and I forgot I haven't yet enabled this function with LiVi. So instead, we export the CSV node again without the animated option turned on. And if I now go to my PM CSV, I should see that if I reload this, I get this first number in my column headers is the frame. So I've got frame 0, plane X position, frame 0, plane Y position, etc. But now I also have frame 1, plane X position. So you can export all the results from all the animated scenarios. It's just that this option here allows you to compare some metrics across scenarios, and I haven't enabled that yet for the LiVi simulation. But I think that's more or less my import-export functionality for the LiVi component and the Radiance component of the V Suite. So I think that's everything I need to say. Okay, thanks for watching.